I'm going to go ahead and ask that we start the presentation on the ESSER funds round 2 to support the strategies and resources we're trying to close the academic gap, the achievement gap. Jen or Erica, who's doing the presentation?
Yes,
We'll share my screen and we have a
screen and we'll be sort of co-presenting. I'm going to start and then Jen will jump in and Bob might also have some to add.
team effort here today. Okay.
So we are starting the presentation.
Erica, you're muted.
Okay, yes, so we are starting the presentation with an overview of ESSER funds. And so I'd like to preface the presentation with the fact that these are overall overarching ideas and strategies for closing the academic achievement gap. This is not definitive by any means. We still have to conduct a needs assessment per the State Department of Education. We still have data sets to analyze, but in response to Michelle's request, we wanted to share with you some potential curricular program and academic enhancements along with some strategies and the cost of such. So again, this is just an overview. We'll be analyzing data, information, and putting something more definitive in place as we know more about the application process and the needs assessment that we have to conduct when the state comes out with their additional guidance. So this second round of ESSER funds is under the Corona Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations. If you recall, our first round of ESSER funds, ESSER 1 funds, were under the CARES Act. So similar type funds through a different appropriations committee. Connecticut got just under $500 million and $500 million. And both for ESSER 1 and 2, over 600 million. The state will reserve 10% of those funds for state level activities, and the rest, 90% of it, will be distributed to LEAs. Next slide, please. So the state has put some priorities in place for these ESSER funds. The funds can be used for academic supports, learning loss, and learning acceleration and recovery. We'll take you through some of that later this evening. They can be used for family and community connections, to engage with families, provide supports to parents and guardians that support both academic and social and emotional learning. Next slide. School safety and social emotional well-being of the whole student and school staff is an additional use for the fundings. And remote learning, staff development, and the digital divide. So ESSER 2 does very similarly cover these priorities like ESSER 1. And next slide, please. It does add a couple of additional uses for addressing learning loss among students affected by interrupted schooling, student attendance, engagement. And it also allows for the use to repair school facilities or make improvements to reduce the risk of virus transmission. So those were some additional uses for the funds that were not allowed under ESSER 1. Next slide. East Haven is going to receive, after we fill out our application, a little bit over $2.9 million. So that is very similar to our Corona relief funds. If you recall, we only received about $640,000 with the first round of ESSER funds. So second round of ESSER funds, just over 2.9 million, which is a pretty significant amount of money for ESSER 2. And the timeline, on January 29th, we had to do a webinar with the state and they followed up with these allocations. Hopefully in 2 weeks, the state will put a plan to release the online application through the e-grants management system. And the application will require us to do a needs assessment and articulate all of the steps necessary. And we'll have to include some data sets in that as well. Upon funding, the state will expect updates on plan implementation. And we'll be doing some quarterly tracking of plan implementation. By September 30th, 2022, our $640,000 of ESSER 1 grant funds must be spent. And by September 20th, 2023, our ESSER 2 grant funds must be expended. And so that just sets the stage a little bit about these funds, the timeline for these funds, and the criteria that come along with application for these funds. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the enhancements and strategies we've brainstormed to utilize.
Yes, thank you, Erica. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the process that we use because this amount of funding really requires thoughtful and intentional reflection on the use of these funds in a way that will allow you to look at the data and what are the things that we can do, the adult actions that we can put in place, and then be able to measure the results. So as you can see here, there's like a framework that's provided by Douglas Reeves in 2006. He talks about lucky versus leading, right? We don't want to be in a position where we get all these great results, but we don't know why. We want to be in this place where we're achieving high results. We know why we got those results and we can replicate our success. So when we looked at the way to spend these funds or to think about the different options, we brainstormed ideas. We looked at the data of where our students were, and our staff were needing supports. And then we reviewed peer-reviewed research and some evidence guides the states and federal government put out, different tiers of evidence that says this is a really highly efficient, like it's worth using this type of intervention. So the things that you're about to see here are the things that have been designated as effective strategies that are based in research, peer-reviewed research that says we don't just think this is a good idea, but we know in other places, if we replicate it in similar ways, we know that it works to lead to improved student achievement. So I just want to ground our conversation in that. There are a lot of things that are good ideas, but we want to base those ideas in sort of this framework. So the proposed enhancements that we landed on after reviewing our student data, and again, Erica referred to a needs assessment, we sort of did a layer of that process, but that tool, usually the state with all these grants will put out a tool that we sort of have to use to compile our research. We did that with the existing research that we had to identify these big buckets of things we think would matter the most to meet the needs of our students. So one is continuity of instruction, helping to allow that despite any COVID interruptions, we can continue core daily instruction and learning despite the challenges related to COVID-19. So we'll speak a little bit more in detail about this, but just a quick overview. That includes certified staff to provide continuity of live stream instruction. With the pandemic, individuals are required to quarantine or become ill and no longer able to teach their classrooms. We want to provide interventions and resources and additional staffing to provide those continuity of instruction, someone skilled to stream some core lessons so students in those classes would have access. We want additional technicians to establish some call centers to help staff, parents, and students as they troubleshoot technology and connectivity issues. Our existing platform and tech services, was designed for a in-school device where we can drop off the material and get it fixed, or have someone deployed to the building. We have a little bit more of a remote environment in many cases now. We also find that there are a number of students who have traditionally performed well in an in-school, in-person environment, and that are currently not performing as well as they and their families expect. In many cases, we find, we don't always have the answers to why, but some of the studies have shown it can be a model of instruction, students affected negatively by the pandemic or health concerns or family economic status. And one of the interventions that was shown to be very effective was support and coaching for executive function, getting organized, getting used to more digital learning, support, check in and check out of things. And so that's another piece that we put together. And then chronic absence and resources supports for families. We know that kids are doing as really a lot these days. They're trying to manage missing their friends, missing their typical, peer activities and interactions. And so if people are struggling, this is also leading to some additional absenteeism. And we want to make sure that the families and our students who may be struggling with that get the support that they need. The second bucket is acceleration of learning. And we'll talk a little bit about what acceleration means, but it means that we want to make sure you may be, if I use the analogy of a boat, right? You don't want to just bail out. You want to plug the holes. We want to really get kids ready to read grade level content, not just address the gaps, but continue to move forward with rigorous grade level content. And so that we can keep moving forward, both bailing out with learning gaps with COVID-19, but to plug any of the holes that have been related to classroom interruptions, so we can continue on a trajectory of rigorous, high quality core classroom instruction. So we have proposed some literacy and numeracy rich interdisciplinary classrooms, increasing those connections, allowing for some pre-K bridge classrooms, which we'll talk about later a little bit more. We have done some investigation on the elementary school instructional day and gotten some feedback around that. And so we are recommending that we potentially increase that instructional day by 30 minutes and a 9 through 12 credit summer academy. Interventions would include a third bucket. So 6 through 12 writing and math labs would be implemented at EHHS and JMS. The summer program, to really make that program a very robust program with not only an option for the morning summer school, but it would be inclusive of some academic supports and enrichment activities to get kids. Many families who may want to do summer school have challenges with being able to find other care that accommodates the summer school schedule. So this would provide additional support. And then we had a proposal for technology integration, literacy and numeracy intervention labs, which we can talk more to what that looks like. Finally, we realized that the social emotional supports are critical, helping with attendance that increase students' well-being and self-efficacy, mindset, and ensure students are present and prepared for learning. This includes a 9th grade pathways initiative that can assist students with the transition from 8th grade. Similarly, a transition program in the 6th grade. There are some good research studies around the importance of those transition years, and an additional coordinator of pathways to support climate, culture, and restorative practice, and really help bridge the gap between the many different supports that our students need. So that's sort of an overview. And I guess we'll call those buckets are like the enhancements, and each of those separate bullets would be the strategies that we're considering that we've reviewed based on the research that we think would help our students. So this is an example of the first bucket, the enhancement of the continuity of instruction. And so the program here, would sort of lead to a projected cost if we were able to provide certified staff, perhaps one in each building, or some of the smaller buildings may have some shared staffing. Again, as Erica stated, this is sort of a menu of options based on what we have initially determined to be some need. That price tag would appear to be approximately that. Additional technicians would be approximately $65,000 to help establish that call center that we discussed. Executive function coaching, which would be individuals who could work with students developing key skills to ensure daily success. And again, it's accelerating and making sure we're unlocking the potential of all of our students, even those who may have typically done well in a fully in-person, non-COVID setting, who may be struggling more than normal during the pandemic. And then a chronic absence support with resources for families is a full-time attendance and truancy support specialist. So I wanted to speak a little bit about acceleration. So I have a very short component of this video that I'd like to share with you. And I'm going to make sure I don't take too much of your time playing the whole thing, although we will share the slides with you. This is Isabel Stevenson, and a number of our teachers attended an acceleration workshop. Teachers took time from their summer to really think about the pandemic and help shift from a deficit mindset to a solution-focused mindset. And I thought her words were very apropos. And bear with me as I try to time this properly to get it to the right spot. Here we go.
First and foremost, we want to turn away from deficit thinking. We know that many students have received little to no instruction over the past few months, and that others have had difficulty connecting for myriad reasons. Research from disasters at other times and in other places shows that it often takes students years to catch up from interrupted school. At the same time, we know that students cannot be successful unless they have access to grade level work. If we organize instruction around curriculum that is below standard for their grade level, and if we slow instruction in line with these lowered expectations for students, then we are creating a situation in which the learning gaps will only grow. Further, we know that typically marginalized and our most vulnerable students are more likely, even at the best of times, to spend more time on below grade level tasks.
So that speaks to this idea of acceleration. We really want to make sure we're again, to use the metaphor of the boat, we're bailing out, but also building a strong ship that we can push forward and really get our kids doing excellent work in their future academic careers. So one of the proposals that we provided additionally was additionally adding some time to the elementary instructional day. So this is approximately based on our review of ConCan's website and where possible contacting individual districts to find out more about their the number of instructional minutes in the school day for an elementary core instruction. So this, although we we appear to be towards at the end, so we have a instructional day when you control for the contractual hours and the students recess and prep time for the teacher. Core instructional content, math, science, reading, writing, this is the sort of breakout of the different groups. Now we looked at our regional and our alliance district partners to sort of just get a sense of where we stood, as that seems to be something many of our teachers feel that they want more time to get to some of the things that they want to do. So that is a proposal that we have on the table. We know that interdisciplinary classrooms, and again, not just reteaching reading. In fact, there's a recent study just in the fall of 2020 showed that teaching social studies, not just extra time on reading where districts would marginalize some of those course content, was actually worse for kids. They did a longitudinal study over a number of years. So we want interdisciplinary literacy and numeracy rich classrooms where students can connect what they know and provide some learning institutes for teachers in the summer to help them really deepen their understanding of the content that they're teaching. And so they can be able to make those connections and have curriculum team leaders to support unit launch activities and things of that nature. This will really help really shore up those connections that can be made throughout the school day. The pre-K, and with an additional time in the school day, that will allow for some of the science and the math, again, with those connections. Our pre-K bridge classrooms offer students who are eligible to enter K in 2021-2022 the opportunity to attend an additional year of pre-K where appropriate. It would allow certain students to have more time to develop critical foundational skills through play-based thematic literacy rich curriculum. So that would lead to an additional 2 pre-K teachers, assistant teachers, and caregivers. The cost associated with increasing the elementary school instructional day would be significant, but that is one of the proposed ideas on the table. And so as you see here, that is the projected cost based on our initial review. of the information for K-5 certified and non-certified staff and transportation.
Don't see me on the video.
And our summer credit recovery would be approximately 50,000 inclusive of certified, non-certified, and transportation. So the third bucket, the third enhancement is enrichment. And so these would be the academic interventions. So the acceleration is to really keep us on grade level. And the intervention would be to then allow us to mitigate any gaps that may have been a result of school interruptions. 612 writing and math intervention labs could be implemented at East Haven High School and the middle school. And again, we did factor in that there are students at the academy, and so a shared interventionist at the Hudson Street site may be an appropriate individual to provide, interventions for students in all of those areas. The Summer Literacy and Math Power Enrichment Academy sort of bridges what we have traditionally done, an extended school year program, as well as a virtual, this summer we did our first virtual summer academy, but this would be the option for in-person summer school that's inclusive. Could be academic acceleration and supports in the morning and enrichment activities that provide important content area literacy, vocabulary development, and oral language skills, as well as fun and additional childcare for families who may benefit from that in the summer. We do have an interest in a gold standard tutoring program. That means more than just sitting with someone for an hour and say, hey, do you need help? But really like targeting the need and helping students drive the process and be, setting their own goals and to improvement. And so we've explored some outside vendors who offer tutoring that we may be able to partner with. And then Erica, I may ask you for some help in a minute to sort of help to discuss the literacy and technology integration labs. But at this time, the proposal is currently our students have specials, 50 minutes a day, 5 days a week. These are supports for our students to receive unified arts curriculum instruction in art, music, PE, health, and technology. And in most cases, they have 2 technology labs per week. I think in some cases there's a rotation. We would take some of that time from the technology labs where the students would continue to learn their technology skills, but also participate in rotations that would foster additional support for literacy and numeracy. And so this would be sort of outside of the instructional day. It wouldn't be taking away time from core instruction if we worked with our technology team to make sure that they were still getting their core, capacities, that they are keyboarding and learning how to use all of the tools that will help them be successful. So we want to work in collaboration with them. Again, these are just fleshed out ideas that will be more fleshed out, but I wanted to see, so that would include some associate instructors that could push into those labs and help move students through rotations with technology or non-technology based literacy and numeracy integration skills and activities. Did you want to add anything to that, Erica?
No, that was very well stated. It's not taking away from the technology block, but restructuring it so that kids are working in small groups, still getting their technology literacy instruction, but also rotating through other centers that may integrate different types of software for acceleration or intervention, and or working individually with certified instructors on key skills related to literacy and math that will help close some of those gaps.
And I wanted to also add that we thought about the individuals who might serve in this role, and that this would be a great pathway for recruitment. It's often, teaching profession, we have an all-time shortage of teachers in the state of Connecticut. Department of Labor results indicate that, we really have some key places where we want to shore up recruiting efforts. And so being able to hire some associate instructors, help them learn about our programming, would then allow us a pool of individuals who may be easily able to move into a classroom position should those become available. It gives us a chance to sort of connect and recruit some top talent by offering maybe pre-service teachers or people who are pending certification an opportunity to do some of this work as well. So that's a thought that we wanted to make sure we shared. So the summary of the social emotional supports, we wanted to sort of focus our attention on some of the transition years, although social emotional supports all over would sort of be improved by the additional supports that the focus on 9th and 6th grade would be providing. And so a pathway initiative in 9th grade would help us to sort of foster ongoing initiatives, such as the Launching Success course that Mr. Donuzzo and Mrs. Harkins have been working to develop that will help our students get core instruction and sort of supports and academic skills, learning how to learn, right? Study habits and skills and how to be successful in high school and in middle school with our 6th grade mindset class that was developed 2 years ago. Those supports are already in place, and this would allow for some embedded supports and connecting with others that are able to really get to know their students, help them navigate their entry into high school. And so that would include also a grade 9 school counselor. So transition supports, there is a current counselor per grade level at the middle school, but we would ask for some funding to support a week-long transition institute that would help our incoming 5th graders get to know their new school. And there's been some really good research around weekly check-in protocols and supports for students that include goal setting, executive function, and social emotional supports. We asked the question at the end of the year on the survey, do you have an adult that you trust in the school? How do you feel about learning? This will give a kid a chance to let us hear their voices and let them talk to an adult and build those connections in an embedded way throughout the course of their 6th grade year. And these could be scaled up to provide supports as we sort of replicate and learn more about these resources with the funds that we have as they become available. As the research states, these are pretty effective strategies. And finally, we do propose a supervisor of climate, culture, and restorative practices. There are so many pieces of the puzzle. You have school counseling, psychology, you have, core content instruction and social emotional learning that individual teachers are providing lessons on and courses. This individual would help oversee and manage transitions and pathways initiatives, school counseling, and the K-12 SEL program. This person may serve as a liaison also with departments and agencies. There's a lot of maybe people that may be supporting a student or a family's individual needs, but having that sort of coordinator to help support and make sure that we're improving equity, cultural competency, and reducing racial and socioeconomic disparities that may have, be disproportionately impacting some groups of students. So that is one of the pieces of the puzzle that we found to be important. And I want to say, as we plan and as we think about this, I always think about what gets measured gets managed. So we don't want to just like, oh, here's some money, we're going to spend a lot of it. We really are committed to ongoing communication of progress and monitoring what's working. And so we really want to make sure that that needs assessment process, which Erica referred to in her discussion with the state. And, that's the cycle of inquiry. So we kind of research the data and look at some of the problems of practice. That's a fancy way of saying, like, what are we scratching our heads about? What do we know we need to improve? What do we know our students need and our families need? And then we have to identify key adult actions. And again, those are the things that are within our capacity as a school district. We can't, we know what the schools function to do, and we know, we may not be able to fix the whole world, but we know that, the key adult actions and research-based strategies that school districts and teachers can put in place. And then, it's all responsibility to take action and then continuously assess and measure the results. And so that's what we're committed to doing. And so, as you can see, we have quite a few, we did our research, we did our reading, we were really thoughtful and intentional about what we put before you today, but I'm sure you have feedback, questions, concerns, ideas. And so I leave this time for you to share with us your input.
I have a question.
Sure. Tom, is that you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything that you propose is, really good. I like it and everything. My question is, you have these funds for the next couple of years. What's going to happen after you do not have these funds, or if they diminish? If you add the staffing on that you were talking about, what's that going to do to the finances of the school?
So Tom, that's a great question. These are funds that will go through September 2023. And so what you saw a lot of in this presentation were strategies and programming that we can implement for a short period of time and then sort of pull back and make them sustainable, but without requiring the operational budget to absorb that cost, because it just can't, right? 2.9% is 6% of our total allocation almost. That's a lot of money. The operational budget cannot absorb all of this. And so some of it is after school programming. Some of it is, building off structures that we already have in schools. Some of it we might be able to do for a short period of time, like extend the school day for a couple of years to close these gaps, but we may not be able to negotiate that difference into our operational budget. And so that's the tricky part about designing these enhancements and implementing strategies to get and close these gaps over a 2-year period without requiring the operational budget to absorb it at the end.
And to your point, Erica, one of the other things that we did put in here is training and investment in our people. So any of those initiatives that support really deepening our teachers' capacity to, improve with certain types of interventions, those may, because we've invested in their training and development, that continues to be a resource that we have forever, right? That teacher now has these skills to run a social emotional learning group or to have embedded interdisciplinary, connection. So we tried to use some funds to really invest in our people to make sure that that would be sustainable, that would continue for without additional funds, but it would last. And so we tried to put things in place that would be.
We also tried to look at some of our existing grant funds and existing programs. And if we have an opportunity to try some of these new programs, if in the future reshaping how we use some of our grant funds, if this particular enhancement or strategy that one of the ones we just presented to you works better than another. So we did also talk about, in the future, looking at existing grant funds and redesigning that grant to be able to continue with one of these strategies or enhancements if it has a better outcome than some of the current program we're running.
Thank you, Tom.
Jen, my question is, looking at everything that you presented, feasibility wise, what do you believe is going to be able to be implemented in a somewhat reasonable timeline?
So that's a really good question. I will tell you this, Michelle, we took things off the table that we thought would not be feasible because of either staffing shortages across the state, or there's certain barriers that are not within our capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that this is a judicious look at what we think would be feasible. The actual feasibility, we would really need to complete whatever the state calls our needs assessment process, and then really examine how that shakes out. But at this time, are you asking?
And I'm thinking also, evaluating along the way our internal capacity and also getting a better handle on, what is school going to look like next year? Because while we presented to you some of the ways that we'd like to accelerate learning and close academic gaps, if we do end up returning to school in the same manner for which we're attending today, there's still health and safety measures and mitigation strategies that we'll have to fund to keep in place. And there are other things that we'll have to use the funds for. So again, this was just an overarching brainstorm. I don't think we have the internal capacity to do everything. And we also have to reevaluate if schools open the way they exist today, we will need some of this funding to help with the health and safety mitigation strategies as well.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned with too. I mean, some of these you did put in there for like a 9th grade counselor. How many counselors do we have at the middle school?
We have 3.
Oh, we do have guidance school counselors?
We have 3 school. We have a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade counselor at the middle school.
Okay, I guess I missed that somewhere along the way, because that really is great that we do that. Because of COVID and because of all the issues around it, it's really going to rely a lot on, feedback from students, and looking at the whole picture, like you said, like where can you put something in and not have to make it part of the cost in the future for us, the town. But those things are very much needed, but at least we do still have 1 there, 3 at the middle school, which I think is great. I'm also just very worried about, are we going to not just we know this is a must, please don't take this the wrong way, but part of this and during this whole pandemic is the issue of, because of the gaps, people are just like, the ship is sinking for some, if you will. So we need to motivate parents and children alike that we need to help and we need each other to move these kids forward. Part of me, and I've said this before, and I don't mean any disrespect to the State Department of Education by any means, I don't, but it's one thing to hand money over to towns and say, okay, here's the money, go and fix all these kids now. There's a lot to be considered, and I'm all for, and I know this won't be popular amongst many people, perhaps, I won't determine who, but I do think we need a longer school day, or we need more time with kids in the classroom. I'm not just saying because, we do it right and everyone should follow suit. I'm not even saying that. I do see a big difference in giving more time in the classroom, period. 47 or 42 minutes is not at all long enough to teach children really anymore. So I would like to see the school day structured differently if possible. And I know that the things around it, such as, contracts, there are other contractual issues, but I really think that we sometimes don't utilize our school day as well as we need to, and that will really be effective for the kids.
And I say, I agree with you, Tia. I think it's important. So much of what we have here is also, we've been fortunate to talk to many parents and students about their experiences. So you referred to, people struggle. I'm a parent. With some knowledge of the educational system, and it is for everybody. There's a challenge to navigate pandemic schooling, to navigate pandemic fatigue, being sick of being stuck at home, missing your friends. So there's so much of that. And so some of those pieces that are in the puzzle, like executive coaching and a social emotional restorative support specialist, those types of things would allow for more of those conversations to take place that inform the two-way communication, help parents, parents and kids and teachers sort of talk to each other and say,
Yes.
like, I'm scratching my head about this. How do I navigate this thing? Give us some more places where we can partner with families, because I haven't spoken to any family member that isn't trying their level best to really.
I agree with that. I totally agree.
I hear that.
I'm just thinking like you're thinking. The kids are so like up to here with much of this, and you can't blame them. But it really is going to be. I think that's where your key is to have the emotional support, the coaching, the restorative practices. Having somebody lead that charge would be really, really a good thing to do, because there's just so, I mean, I commend you on this whole project. It's great, you know, but like you said, I mean, coming to fruition, we need to motivate the kids and hopefully they'll get that. We need you guys. We need you to come back in the summer.
Yep.
We gotta, you know, we need to do that. Right now, I just wonder if we're gonna get a lot of children to come back in the summer. I'm hoping we do. You know what I'm saying?
And we have to think about, staffing too, because people are tired. And in our conversations, we also talked about, extended day programs and,
I agree.
traditionally how we've run them and advanced summer programs and with a longer day. We were concerned that, people are tired right now. And we were concerned about not having enough people apply to run those programs. And so we talked about, using outside vendors or a tutoring model instead, and some things of that nature. I'm really curious to see what the state's needs assessment is going to look like and what that's going to yield for us, parallel to some of the data that we're looking, like our middle of the year data and our, course failures and our earned credit and things of that nature. It'll be interesting to see when we compile all that, how that helps to shape our application. And at that time, we may know more about what the next school year will look like, because that is also a very huge consideration. Huge. That variable is enormous. Are we going to be doing both remote and in-person versus just in-person? Is a big consideration in terms of planning and this grant application.
Thank you.
Jack, your question?
Yeah, just quickly, and correct me if I missed something. And I love all of this, and it looks like a lot of it is, intervention and helping kids to get caught up. Has there been any thoughts, or did I miss it, or any plans for those overachievers? Or is there funds allotted for that? For those kids. My first year of teaching, I had a terrific student. She's an emergency room physician now, who used to have on the back of her notebook "on board," and every once in a while she'd hold it up, and I would realize I'm losing this kid, and it would inspire me, to get going. So I'm just wondering about those kids that are the overachievers. Are we providing for them?
Yeah, so some of the things, and I don't know if I spoke to this enough, we have looked at the data, and there are a number of students who were performing very well on an in-person model or on a non-COVID schooling model. And that's not necessarily the case now. And so we don't always know why, but in many cases, and I've been fortunate to speak with many families who have been very candid and have had my own kids, and Erica and I sort of discuss with our teachers, there is a need. So some of those things like executive function coaching and supports, a good coach can help even the most, highly intellectually skilled students sort of channel all that academic energy.
Right.
Students who may typically perform well, but may also have a profile of a neurodiversity that may have different way of thinking and learning that need to sort of learn more about how they learn. Those kinds of supports, I think, benefit everybody. And so those are embedded in here as some executive function and coaching and supports. And again, additional resources for transitioning will help us listen to the needs of those kids and pivot and shift any needs that we have to put those things in the right direction. But yeah,
Thanks, Jen.
really well, I think we thought a lot about a lot of our kids and making sure we unlock everybody's potential in this process.
And Jack, part of including not just an intervention model, but an acceleration model was in an effort to meet the needs of those kids as well.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I forgot to unmute. No, thank you, Jen. It's really pretty much, I think everyone will agree, a lot to take in, a lot to, really look at and examine. I'm happy that you shared the resources. And will this be made available to the board, document-wise, for the resources in the PowerPoint?
Yes, I believe Melissa has those, or will be putting those in the drive.
Perfect. Okay, that's great. That's all I have. I know we do have a 6 o'clock meeting for policy. So trying to keep us on schedule. I am going to ask one last time if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we will most certainly circle back fairly soon, I'm certain. But at this time, I think we're going to go over to policy, if that's okay. Did anybody have any last questions? I think it might be best if everyone takes some time to maybe formulate some, well thought out concerns or questions, and then we could get back with you. How's that sound? Good? All right, great. Thank you. All right.
Sure, call policy meeting to order. We start with policy review. 9325.2, order of business. This one is just on for review. It was last reviewed in 2018. I did meet with Erica, I believe, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And we were just, this was last reviewed in 2018. However, we're just going to bring everything up into the 2000s. There were a few from 97, but as you can see, there's no change to this. So this is just on for review.
Okay. Did anyone have it? Oh, sorry, Erica.
That's all right.
It's all you. No,
Any questions for this one? I mean, there's nothing getting changed on this. All right, perfect. The next one is board meeting procedures, 9320, and that one was last reviewed in February 25th, 97. So we got a little updating on that one. Nothing is being changed on this. This is also for review. Nothing really to change on procedures if you just want to just look that over.
I do have one question. Being that we now know you're only required to really post 24 hours prior, and that we may add, more current, or I guess items closer to that date. Should we leave 3 days prior, or should we put at least 3 days if possible?
Can I talk? I'm going to raise my hand.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, the reason we did that, I think Tom Hennessy might remember, that was so we have access to the things that we need in order to conduct a meeting and to absolutely understand and go over things before the meeting.
So like the principal documents, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
well, that's why I'm saying if possible, just because if there are things added, or if we have a meeting, that we only have 48 hours notice, which we're meeting the 24-hour, advance notice requirement, we would be violating this policy.
Wait, what part is that, Michelle?
First paragraph,
First paragraph.
second line.
I don't know. I'd like to hear from Tom Hennessy, because that, and I really mean that. I mean, because we have, I'll let Tom speak, because I think he
I think we should leave it alone, and I think we ought to try and practice what it says, because
Well, that's what I'm saying.
a lot of times we walk into the meeting and they send around a handout with new stuff on it. How can you possibly read that and
Well,
make
that's
a
the thing.
educated decision on it? So I think we should leave it and try and the best we can live by it.
And even if they provided a little notice, you can't just send an email, because on the day of the meeting, some of us might not, they've already gone over the package and they're not
Right.
looking at that email until the time to meet. So even if we got just a little notice, like, if you have time, could you look this over? And if possible, then give us the okay, we can, whatever, do something with it. Sometimes it's adding, you forgot a name or something.
But we don't have anything to reflect on whether we have meetings, special meetings called. There's nothing in here on that.
Is this only for special meetings, Michelle?
This says just all meetings, 3 days in advance. That's what I'm saying. there should be wording then that, allows for special meetings.
I
I mean,
believe we
I
recognize
agree.
it.
I like the 3 days in advance. I like the time to look over the materials. But at times when we only schedule a special meeting 48 hours before the date that it runs, we cannot abide this policy.
But a
It's just not
special
possible.
meeting is you can't, you're right. That's why there is something called a special meeting. I think
Yeah.
we have a more updated version of this.
Well, why don't we just add something for special meeting? I mean,
But
do we
I think
have
with a
that?
special meeting, we should look in Robert's rules, right? And write that down. And you have to be given the agenda. You stay on the agenda.
Yeah.
And I thought it was 24 hours.
Yeah,
Robert
you
Rules
only,
says
you only need 24 hours. We've been trying to do at least 48, but I'm just saying that we should have something in there about that. So then, we're covered. I mean, the policy should cover all meetings, I think. I don't know.
So you mean add like an injunction to basically reflecting special meeting protocol in this as well?
Yeah, that information will get to the board within a 24-hour period. I mean, I think it's just more thorough with covering, all options.
Okay.
Again,
So we could review this one for tonight. We're coming back with the 6,000 series, and then we could come up with, Erica, we could put on to come up with something regarding the special meeting protocol to add to this.
Yeah.
again, I want to be clear what I'm saying. I do think it's a good idea for the at least 3 days in advance. But being that this is in print as board policy, if that's not abided to, then we're violating policy. So, we need to have a clause in there.
I agree.
So
So,
I understand what you're saying.
but I do think there's something, I'm willing to meet with you, Erica, as part of your committee, by the way. So I feel like, you don't have to do all this. We could meet remote, and just discuss it however, it has to happen. Because that's the way we used to do it. Even I met with Sam sometimes too, and, just to kind of discuss what you want to present. I'm just willing. I just feel like you're doing a one-man show, and that's not fair to you.
Erica's been a significant help with the policy as well. So I can't.
And again, there's no policies on the agenda. This is what this is for.
Yeah.
There's no policy on the agenda tonight. This is for a discussion to give
that's good.
input. And then next week, we can bring the revised policy forward. Review it again in subcommittee and put it on the agenda for approval. That's just the exact point of this, right? To get your input, to make some suggestions and revisions if necessary.
Right. Right. So that's definitely good feedback.
I'm just saying, we just need to have something in there about, time-sensitive information that needs to get to the board when we need to make decisions. I mean, what if it's updated information that is, I don't know.
I think that, I don't know, when this gets released to the public as well.
This eventually gets posted to our website. Yeah, where all the policy lies. Just there
3
is
days
no
ahead of time,
model
because
policy for 9320. It doesn't exist in the core policy manual, so it's not necessarily a required policy. But if we want to outline what this board does relative to the posting of documents, we can make sure that we include what happens at a special meeting as well.
Okay. And then Tia, you were asking if this referred to when items are released for public viewing?
Yeah, because I'm not saying I don't want that to happen, but I really think that the board has to definitely go over all this, and it takes time. And there could be something, might be added, if it needs to be, and we would be addressed. I just think, I'm not trying to be not transparent. I want to be, but I think it should be like the day before, perhaps, or, it really, because we say Friday, but our meetings are on Tuesdays, there's so much innuendo that gets just, shared all over the place that.
So Tia, sorry to interrupt you. Do you think it would be helpful if waiting maybe towards Monday, the 24-hour before for it to be released for the public. Is that what you're saying? So that way, if there is changes, that 24-hour beforehand, it would be more helpful. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I just think there would be less misunderstanding, if you will, because sometimes things are out there and they're like,
Or
no,
those
that's
changes.
not what they mean. Yeah,
Or those last minute changes that were added on, and then I understand. Okay.
And
Okay.
generally, you know, we do hand out updated hires and rehires, because between Friday and Tuesday, we may have somebody who submits their paperwork. And instead of making them wait another 2 weeks to get before the Board of Ed for approval, we do make those edits prior to the meeting on Monday or Tuesday.
So Erica, is that something that we could do instead of releasing our on Friday for our agendas, our public agendas? Waiting until the Monday, the 24-hour before, we can include that in our,
I mean, yeah, whatever the board desires.
and then that way, if there's any changes over the weekend or anything that needed to be included, we'll release that in our agenda. That way, if there's any changes, then we'll make sure that everything's.
Yeah, and because sometimes what happens is, you know, in terms of the hires and rehires in particular, you may not be able to connect with a reference. And if you haven't done enough reference checks, you can't get the person on the board. But on Monday or Tuesday morning, you end up connecting with their reference.
Right.
That completes the paperwork and the packet. But we don't want to wait an additional 2 weeks to bring the person for hire. We'd rather get them on that night. And so those little sort of nuances, I think, are what sort of require us to make those little changes to the in particular, the hires and rehires.
but that could also be leading to some of the miscommunication sometimes, that things get blown up out there and you know, we have to do this, we have to, and then come the meeting, it's already been resolved, whatever situation was either miscommunicated or misunderstood. I really feel that we're elected, you know, officials I take this seriously. I read everything, but I might not get to it Friday night or even Saturday because I have schedule of things that I have to do. So I might sit Sunday, but to hear things and to see you know, even social media, it just gets entirely misconstrued sometimes. And I'd rather not look at anything with bias. I try not to even look anymore, but you know, there's time to phone us if they get it, you know, Monday morning, that should be fine. You know, they can talk amongst, you know, whatever people want to do. I'm not trying to hide anything, but I just think it would save a little bit. We should have a right to kind of go through it.
Okay.
All right.
I don't,
Your hand up.
I have a comment.
Yes, Tom.
I don't think you should release separately.
No,
Everything we do is in the public venue. It's FOIable. There's nothing we have that's secret, and
I know. I felt that it might get misconstrued if we did
Yeah.
it. I'm not denying it, Mom.
whatever, just send it all out.
All right,
I'm
and
sure-
then
I'm
And
sure that that's
then-
how it's going to be taken, but I don't
Yeah,
be like that, Tom. You know that, right? I mean, I'm really not.
no, I know what you're saying, but I'm just saying there's
Nothing you can do about it.
there's nothing you can do. It's the way it is. We're in the public venue. Everything we do is
Yes, I know that.
public.
Okay.
all right, the next one is 9031, employment of personnel. And that was also last reviewed February 25th, 1997. I believe this one is just a review, no changes to this as well.
No, they have 214 here.
Are you on 9031A?
I'm sorry, yes, 9031A.
So this one was reviewed on January 14th, 2014, right?
Oh.
Okay,
Oh, this is the A, yes.
okay.
January 14th, yes. Okay, and then 14 bylaws, got that.
Have we checked for an update with CABE on the non-discrimination policy? Is this, I mean, this is the one we had, or is this with the revisions? What we're looking at, 9031 in the packet. Is this the original that wasn't updated since 2014, or does this contain updates from CABE?
I
I
believe
don't
it's
think, Has
The
this
updated
changed
one.
since
This one was up
2014?
for review, so there was nothing revised, right? Is this a review? Yes, if it's a review, there's no revision.
Okay,
Which
that's
one
what
are
I'm
we
asking.
on? Which one are we on?
We're on employment of personnel by
All
law.
right, so I have a question on that when you get a chance.
Go ahead, Tom.
So it says here, no candidate, permanent or temporary, may commence employment prior to notification of the board. What does that mean? Does that mean board approval or that you're just telling us you're hiring that person?
I take it as board approval, so all those rehires, hires, they have to go to the board first. The only people we try that that aren't sort of hires, well, I guess now they actually are, if we're thinking about this word, would be substitutes. But I'm thinking all hires that come
Right.
to you on the hire, rehire list
Right.
are supposed to be prior to,
It says at a duly authorized meeting.
Yeah.
But really, don't we just authorize the positions and not the individuals?
no, this board
No.
actually approves the hire.
No, if you read the first paragraph, we hire.
Mhm.
But I think the word approval should be in that second paragraph somewhere.
Permanent or temporary may commence employment. Which?
It should say prior to approval of the board. That's my guess, but you might have to ask a lawyer. I don't know.
I think we went over this. I think it's the superintendent's jurisdiction over individual hires.
I don't think so.
No,
No?
I make
She makes
I'm-
a recommendation.
recommendation to the
Okay, recommendation, because I'm just wondering how the board members are qualified to know whether a teacher is the right applicant rather than the school principal and superintendent.
I think that we should know because people might,
It's the hires and rehires list that the board approves that
Yeah.
comes before them. By the way, I couldn't find a model K policy 9031 for employment of personnel under the 9000 series. I thought this was very specific to the East Haven Board of Education.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah, I couldn't find any model here for that.
but most boards do accept and or deny either hires or resignations.
I don't know.
Like it has
I've gone
to,
over this with the attorney before. I'm not gonna say anything else.
so are you saying yes or no, though? Do we need to do this, Michelle?
I'm gonna make sure I get confirmation from him. I was always told we approve the positions. The hiring really is up to the district staff. We are supposed to hire, our
But we're just
only
supposed
employee
to
is the
get notified.
superintendent.
I
Yeah,
don't
we're
think
supposed
we
to just
have
be
to
notified.
vote on it.
We don't,
Don't
we
have to
don't.
vote on it.
We
just
vote on
have
the
to be
positions.
Which is why
We
it's
vote on,
specific to East Haven.
we vote on the positions for the budget. That is our role. Our only employee is the superintendent. We have no jurisdiction over anyone else, according to state statute, and I'd rather abide by that.
I agree.
mean,
It only
I-
says notification.
Well,
Yeah.
then you have to get rid of this whole policy because it says in there, we hire them.
Yeah, you're right. And
Yeah.
I don't think that is with our role. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, looking at statute of what the board does. I mean, things have been done here certain ways for a long time.
I think we should go by what the, I think that first paragraph is wrong, right? And I think she can just enter it into, and we accept that we received it if we vote on anything. We really don't say, unless you need to abstain for some reason, right? Other
Mhm.
than that, we accept it.
Yeah,
He shows us the recommendations and it says here, notification. That does not mean we vote and have anything to do with it. It has to be changed. I agree. We only allow for the position, you know.
All right, so I got something else to talk about while we're on this.
Is
Really
it-
get you thinking.
Is
Okay,
it pertinent to the employment personnel? Is it pertinent to this one or
Yes,
is, Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. All right, so I participated in the last interview process. I haven't done that in probably 4 or 5 years. So I think that thing has come off the rails a little bit. I think the interview committee thinks they're selecting the candidate, and I don't think that should be. I think the superintendent selects the candidate, as it says here in this policy. So I think the interview committee's job is to give acceptable names to the superintendent, and the superintendent makes the final choice of who she wants to hire.
Well,
The
I would like
she
to-
recommends, she gives a recommendation.
We give acceptable names,
Yep,
makes the pick.
I think that's how it does work.
that's
No.
how Erica sets it up.
I don't think so. So I think that needs to be clarified. I
Okay,
think with the forced choice thing, I think sometimes the superintendent thinks they gotta hire number one, and that's not true.
yeah, but Erica, do you feel that way?
In this policy 9031A, I don't see where it says that, I see it says the superintendent is authorized to post all vacancies in new positions as they occur. Am I missing something? Oh, in the first sentence, you're saying all personnel upon recommendation and submission of the name or names of candidates by the superintendent of schools. That's the hire and rehire list that the board gets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So-
so I
right,
think we're all in agreement that this is could use
I
work.
think the non-discrimination portion of this is up to date. It seems to be in a strange place because there's no non-discrimination policy in the 9,000 series. It falls in the 4,000 and I think maybe the 6,000 series. Again, I think this is a policy specific to East Haven for the employment of personnel, and that the non-discrimination piece was added, as we know at the bottom of our job descriptions for EEOC.
I think we should get some advisement on this particular
We
policy.
don't have to have this here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll definitely touch back on this, on the 9031A.
To like 9021.
Pending more information for sure. Okay, the next one would be policy revision, which is 9321. And that is the time, place, notification of meetings. You could see in the red, that is where the changes were made, and that includes, well, Erica, do you want to discuss the changes that were put in?
Yeah, so there was another policy 9321.1 that just talked about Board of Education workshops. I think our proposal was to get rid of that 9321.1, the workshops, and incorporate it into this one. This policy 9321. 9321 talks about regular meetings, special meetings, notice of meetings. It made sense to just add the workshop in this particular policy so we can get rid of 9321.1. And then also CABE recommended adding electronic participation based on sort of what's been transpiring now during COVID and the board's potential for allowing people to attend electronically in the future.
Well, I know that it's a sign of the times, but are we just going to be carte blanche about that? Because sometimes meeting in person and really being a part of a meeting is a very different dynamic. But I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying I don't want to do it if we have to, and we will. But is it just going to be, oh, gee, I don't, do I have to go? I want to stay home and have the meeting online.
So, and if you read this, it doesn't talk about like the whole board. I think it talks about members in which some members can participate electronically if necessary, and that the board may allow members to participate in meetings by telephone or other electronic means.
But it's not something we commonly practice. But I see why we should allow for it, because we do have members who fit us in on the job. They can't leave their work and get there in time, but yet they could really fully participate. And that happens a lot, and it's essential then, that I understand. But I'm not being rude by any means. If it's hard for that person to get there, and they can be a part of the meeting, just like we learn how to have these meetings with children, right? We teach online. I have those in front of me. I have those online. I will tell you, it's not as easy, but that's understandable if we do that, right? I mean,
This would apply for like weather-related situations as well?
yeah, right? It says may, so you could
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah, okay.
All
I'm
right, so
good
I
with
got a
it.
question.
Hi, Tom.
All right, so prior to the pandemic, what you're saying here was against the law.
No, some board members actually did allow some board members to participate electronically in some cases, from what I've heard from all the other board chairs.
I would check with an attorney.
Yeah,
Before the pandemic, this was against the law.
because I remember reading that in some cases, they even allowed them to vote through proxy. That is established. It's not law. It's established by the board's policy.
I'm
So
not
whatever the
sure
board
about that.
decides.
I'm not so sure about that because we asked before, but I
Yeah,
would check.
that's what Robert's rule says.
So this is
Robert's rules isn't the state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, no,
laws
the
in our
state-
state.
Yeah, this has been updated like through the state.
Yeah,
Not,
right. That this red language was taken directly from CAVE as part of their
Yeah.
legal.
But is that during pandemic times or is that forever?
I think
They-
it's in general.
they believe they're gonna adopt it going forward, yeah.
I'm
I think it's a
surprised
sign of the times.
because we asked before and it was absolutely
I
no.
agree, Tom. I remember that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I do also think it's gonna help in general with winter meetings and policy, any snow days, meeting cancellations, things of that
Yeah.
nature. Because, once you miss a meeting, then you get backed up, when it comes time for budgets and things to that nature, it really does screw up the role, when you start missing and things like that. So if we have a snow date and you have to cancel, remember when that time when we started canceling meetings and then it's like you start getting back to back? I think it really would help if, okay, it's a snow day, we have to,
Mhm.
so I think it would help, so.
I don't have a huge problem with it either. I really don't. I think that I would like to see
I'd like to just see us stay on
others
time
participate.
with everything. Yeah. All right. And then the next one is a new policy, which Michelle, I believe you sent this to me.
Oh, sorry, Michelle.
No, it's from CAVE. I didn't write it.
No, I know you didn't write it, but I believe you had found it and then brought it.
For us to look at, yeah, for the
Yes, for us to look
civility code.
OMG is what I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
Which it is a long policy, but I do believe it has really great points to it.
Mhm.
And I also believe there is at the end, after the sources, there's meeting protocol. It does have great structure to it. I think it is definitely worth taking a look at and possibly adopting as a new policy in the 9000 series.
yeah, I
Well,
mean,
this one was really good.
most of the boards have recently adopted this. They said especially, the need being especially due to, electronic meetings. It is. Sorry, my son's cooking. Hold on, I gotta mute. The fire alarm is going off.
I'll wait for Michelle if you want. But I do have something I'd like to say, and I don't want it to be taken out of context.
Yeah, no problem at all.
A lot of this is vague. You can't measure this. You can't prove somebody doesn't recognize the importance of effective governance team. There's so much rhetoric here that you go against this. This is like, it's like me giving this to a group of students. I have all this. These are all the rules of being in class. Do you know what this is going to lead to? It's going to lead to people fine tuning, because you can't determine what I think is private or not. I'm going to use a poor example there. Some of these I think are right. They should be listed there, but there's so many on the other page as not, but this one even, review relevant information and become informed concerning the issues to be considered at those meetings. Who are we to judge each other that you haven't done that? We have this listed somewhere. And who is somebody, how do you know that? Somebody gonna come in and is there a test? if I reviewed all the materials. Do you know what I'm saying? It's very negative to me. And I don't mean any disrespect. Michelle should hear it because she's the one who got it.
No, I mean, I asked for Cave. Cave sent over what they had. This is it for everyone to see. I mean, I'm not taking it personally. I didn't write it. But we got to look at it though. It's a civility code. It's not necessarily a law.
But you will give this wide open to anyone, to each other. Tom, you remember we had some issues on the board. I'm not, you can have this. I mean, but anybody could walk up and say, you're not a respectful person. Somebody else could walk up, well, I think that she's respectful, but I think it's this. This is like opening up a huge, we have a code of conduct, more or less, and I didn't think it was awful. And then we have protocol. It's like replicated in the protocol.
I mean, with that point, if we have a code of conduct, somebody could say anything about any of those as well as a code of ethics.
I'm going to say this very bluntly. There are many people who already have violated these. Any one of us on any time.
Yeah.
But no, nothing is done about it anyway. Nothing, you can only censor somebody. Do I think that we should have decorum on the board? Absolutely. I never mean to hurt people, neither does anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Our anger or our passion gets the better of people sometimes, all of us, I'll say us. And that does happen. But this is almost so negative. Value equal participation. I mean, these could be just around, maybe tweet, not interrupt each other during debate. That's great, and that's protocol, but we've done it and nothing is, I'm not saying you either, I'm not pointing a finger at you, Michelle, but you know, even when there's points of order about things like this, that it's almost like looking for, oh, I'm going to go through this, and it's just negative to me. I don't feel like it's a positive written policy. If you look up, it's all, there's maybe Hampden, Norwalk, you know, you look at the sources. Otherwise, it's all from the South. You know.
I mean, I don't look at it as it telling us to police one another. I look at it as just advice for board member behavior to the individual. I mean, if you want to go over the language, we can. But when I read it, I didn't take offense by any of it.
I'm not offended, but I do feel like I'm an educator. I would never give this to my students, okay? Because I want them to participate. I want them to do their best to participate in class, to do your best to circulate proposed motions and amendments wherever possible, at least 48 hours before the meeting. That's not bad. You have speak only when recognized, not interrupt each other during debate. That's like, if you respect each other, those are included.
Well, apparently not, because I have to remind everybody every meeting. So I'm not sure about that.
Michelle, I agree.
May I say something?
Go ahead, Marianne.
I understand what Tia is saying, and I agree with her, but I cannot think of a way to make it. I mean, we can't say, you know, follow the Beatitudes or follow Emily Post's rules of decorum. How would you state it? How would you state it possibly?
I'm just going, you too. We learn, right? We're adults, but this is, I want decorum. I want all of those things. And I think there's a better way to put this. I think Cave is doing a disservice by wording it in this context. They're not looking at, we're working with a school. We're working for a school system, right? We're serving, we're not you know what I'm saying? We serve for everybody. So I look at that as like a classroom. If I give them all of these do's and don'ts, you guys, somebody's gonna, it's a mess. You've got to, we're always told, especially in special ed, you have your rules, 6 basic rules, 10 basic rules that all of these things can fall under. They're all vague anyway. No, what you think is unethical, I might think isn't. What somebody else thinks is, you know, model civility. What civility to you, to one person, is not considered civility to another. There's too
Absolutely,
much vague wording.
absolutely. And so maybe we have to
Well,
really,
that could be-
because this is a thing that our group has a problem with. When I
Mhm.
filled out the questionnaire about how we're doing, that's what I said is our worst problem, is speaking politely to each other and taking turns politely. And you know, the
Mara,
whole
just
thing, we all
so
we
you
all
know,
exactly
you-
what it is.
Mara, just so you know, that survey was about your behavior individually. So.
Well, okay, all right.
So there you go.
well, that could be
I
everyone's homework.
will take ownership for my own behavior.
And if
Um,
you would like,
So you can tell me how you want me to behave.
I want you to be humble and be kind, and I'm going to work hard to do that too. I just
Yes,
think
but
this is
those are nebulous terms. Be humble. Be
right.
kind. Well,
Everything on here is nebulous.
Mhm.
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not being cruel. I'm really not. But I have a problem with this one. It's way too wordy. I
Why
really-
don't you go through them and maybe star some or, look at
I'm
the
gonna look at
wording?
the ones that we had that were never followed too,
Yeah.
because they were pretty good.
Mm.
Which one is that? Which
They're
policy?
all nebulous. I don't have the old one.
Do we have a
The
code
policy.
of conduct? We have a civility code?
No, just a
It's from a
short code of conduct. I don't think it's a.
We have code of conduct and we have ethics. Somewhere there's an ethical thing, but
Oh, yeah,
civility
that's
code,
done well.
I don't know.
Michelle.
I don't
That could be some homework.
I just don't see
that
this as people turning
Yeah.
around and saying, okay, we're all going to be beautiful people.
This is what is, again, being posted right now to boards.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
they named 5 places, okay?
Yeah. Well, it's new. Like I said, it's new.
Only 2 in Connecticut.
Yeah. Well, it's a new policy.
All right, well. If
I'm
there's,
just being honest, that's all. I mean,
maybe
hey,
we can have a policy workshop.
I would love
Yeah.
to.
I mean, again, that's the only reason that everyone asked for something about board meeting conduct. This is what Cape had.
And we can all work on some policy for board conduct on our workshop.
We
You
can
got it.
pretend we're kindergarten. In kindergarten, there you
Oh,
say,
Minnie.
you know what? When you're speaking in class, you can't call each other names.
And
You
don't
can't-
bite or kick.
Yeah, you can't. Just make nice. There's got to be grown-up ways to say that.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great, like, I don't know, foundation maybe to look at next time we meet. But again,
I agree.
it's what they had, it's what I was able to share, and it's for the board to modify and personalize.
I agree. Everyone could take it as some homework and maybe look and see what you like or dislike about it. And we can always do a workshop and work on fine tuning it and maybe adopting it to be unique to East Haven.
Yeah, because I think some of the items are repetitive, but that's why you go through them and see which one of these items work for you.
And if you
We
look at
should
the
add
pol-
one, read the ethics policy before each meeting.
if you look at this particular policy, the civility policy, it also isn't, it's about, it has an I statement, I will.
Yeah.
So it's a very personal thing as opposed to all together, all at once, like a code of ethics or a, what did you just say?
Conducts,
Conduct, yeah.
it's
It's more
civility, yeah.
I will, I'm recognizing, yeah. So, we might have to look at it through that lens or context a little bit more, but we can set something up if you're interested in having more conversations about this off, as a separate workshop outside of a board meeting night where we can do some deep work on it.
Sure.
We can set something up through the subcommittee chair, Erica.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
That's no problem at all. All right, so I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn for the policy subcommittee.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Erica, though. You did a lot of work. And it's
Well, I have to thank Superintendent Forty. She was very helpful.
wonderful.
Anytime.
Teamwork.
I got another thing for policy.
Oh,
Before we close it.
go ahead, Tom.
When are we gonna nail down they're on the state bid list?
I think
Does it
that's the
make-
5,000 series.
It's making me crazy.
That's the 5,000 series, right?
We're working on the 6,000 series. We're meeting
All
this
right.
week, and then I'll make sure that we are, and then the 5,000 series will follow right after that. So,
Beautiful. Thank
all
you.
right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Hey, you know your series, Michelle.
I don't know why that one sticks with me, but it does.
I wonder.
It was
Um,
the first one we tackled when I became chair, I believe. And we're circling back.
We're going back for more.
All
It's a
right.
good point. It's a good point.
All right, so motion to adjourn, go into finance.
Okay, gonna open up the finance subcommittee with review. If anybody have any questions on POs over 7,000 and invoices.
I do, but I gotta find my questions worksheet. I did. That was my other meeting. Is this when I go over the invoices, like the 29-page thing, right? So I just have a blanket. I just didn't understand the J Associates, a building rental. It says blanket maintenance, it's $650. But I just want to know, why are we paying for maintenance?
That's
It's
the
the
shed,
rental
right?
building
Yeah.
that for the maintenance supplies and parts and things.
Oh, it's the building?
It's the building rental.
I'm so sorry. I thought somebody rented a building and we didn't get what I'm saying?
It's our storage.
That's not revenue, right? You understand where I made my mistake?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you.
you're welcome.
And MetLife,
Yes.
I just said, wow. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't
It's our
know.
life insurance. We have very high rates because we cover retirees for their life.
Oh,
So we pay a very high premium because of that. But as the people age and pass, the rates will change eventually because no one gets free insurance for life anymore.
so we grandfathered that, correct?
It's been grandfathered out of nearly every contract. I believe the administrators might have something in there still. I'd have to look at the contract.
Right, a certain point. Okay,
Correct.
all right. Wow. And I certainly, I understand. That's it for me, Tom.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we'll move on to budget projection.
If you look at the projection, there's a balance of $1.2 million left that has not been encumbered yet. And going forward, the expenditures for COVID-19 related services and people will be encumbered under those, so that you'll see that goes down. And I currently do not foresee a large balance projected at year end due to the COVID related expenses that we're shifting from the Corona Relief Fund grant to the general fund, since the Corona Relief Fund grant has expired.
So now, as of December 31st, Corona relief funds had to be expended. They are allowing you to receive invoices for any expenditures during that time period up until a certain time frame. But now the operational budget will have to absorb some of those expenses that we wrote into Corona relief funds, which are sanitation attendants, some LPNs, bus monitors, any additional PPE we have to order, any additional cleaning supplies, some custodial overtime, and things of that nature.
Do we have a cost estimate at least for manpower hours?
So we're going to be requesting a budget transfer at the next meeting to account for that cost projection.
Did we expend all our Corona relief funds?
There's still some encumbered because we haven't received the bills yet, but yes, we have
So we
expend.
spent all the money. We didn't get caught by time.
No, we spent all the money. We're just waiting for the bills to roll in to pay them off.
Okay. All right. Any questions on the budget projection? We'll move on to the cafeteria report.
Currently, the cafeteria is doing a very, very, very good year. COVID has been good to the cafeteria program. Right now, the profits are $497,559. And of those profits, we're going to put money back into the program and try and purchase things that they need for the schools. So we'll be bringing to you bid specs for a freezer at the middle school to replace the one that no longer works, and one for the academy so that they can have their own products stored there instead of having everything stored at the high school.
All right.
Any questions on the report?
No, but I have a comment. In a conversation with the auditor last week, I was asking what some other, audits are finding across other districts relative to challenges brought on by the pandemic. And one of the areas he cited that a lot of districts are having a lot of issues with are their cafeteria accounts and being in the red large sums of money in this particular area. So, I know in the past it's been a challenge for us, but since we've made the transition and we've become community eligible, and we've been working really diligently to make sure that our remote learners are have access and are receiving breakfast and lunch, and we're providing it in advance when we know snow days or in advance of like this long weekend break coming up. I think we've done a really great job managing that, but also balancing, the staffing needed with running the program as well. So, I mean, I don't recall ever seeing the account being so high before, and I'm looking forward to reinvesting in the program and getting some cool, innovative food programs in front of our kids.
Sounds good. All right, any other questions? Can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Mary Ann, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, we're all set.
Call to order this evening's meeting, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Melissa, you have the flag? Great. Pledge allegiance
To the
to the
flag
flag
of
United.
the United States of America and to the republic
Republic
For
for
which
which
it stands,
One nation.
one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Okay. All right, I'll begin this evening with my chair report, and then I have a guest to speak this evening, Attorney Michael Luzzi from the town. All right, so first I'd like to thank the BOE members who have submitted their survey, and those who have not, if you can take the opportunity and check your email, that would be great. Also, in an effort to address recent concerns regarding an agenda item related to a roofing project, I have asked Attorney Luzzi to be here. I remind everyone that BOE members need to base decisions using information provided to us, and we need to trust that information is valid and reliable. So though it is not within the scope of the BOE to analyze or investigate the authenticity of information, I would like to better understand what safeguards will be used going forward. And it's my hope that Attorney Luzzi can clarify the town's process for capital fund projects, as well as the board role deemed appropriate in that process. So at this time, I'm going to ask Attorney Luzzi if you would like to chime in.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if you can see me. Can you hear me?
Can hear you, can't see you.
you're probably better off.
Now we
Probably
could,
bet-
now we could
probably-
see you.
Probably better off that way. First of all, Michelle, thank you for inviting me. And I'm here for the purposes of one, clarification. Two, to make sure that, everyone understands, that certainly there is a process with respect to the capital monies and their availability. With respect to this roofing issue, it was brought to our attention. I quite frankly, in fairness to Jim Keeley, he was aware and had really stepped in and addressed this, even as as I found out about it. It was brought to my attention by the superintendent. We certainly respect the sovereignty of the Board of Education. There's no question that we're all well aware that once we work through the budget process and you take your operational side of it, that is your sovereign responsibility to deal with it by law. The interesting part about it is we are inexplicably or explicably attached by this capital budget situation. And there are only three ways with respect to capital that funds can and should be spent. These items should go out to bid if they're more than $7,400. They should be bid competitively, and the town will assist and take care of that with respect to it. If in fact there's a bid waiver to be sought on the capital project end, that certainly would go through the town as well and go through the town council with the recommendation of the finance director. And then of course I think where the confusion lied with the last item we dealt with the roofing was when in fact there is a state bid to be used. And basically, state bids are allowed based on the waiver for the need not to use the local bidding protocols because these items have been bid en masse, at the state level. I know that you all might use them for things like copiers or paper or products of that sort. And I think after looking at what happened here, Vinny worked with Candy and probably had a process that had been in place for a while. And thought that the item was on the state bid list. I certainly have no once we looked at it, it was pretty clear that that's how everyone was moving forward. And once it was determined that this particular group was not on the state bid list, it was pretty clear that it had to come back to you all to be revoted upon, and then ultimately, if in fact you decide to go forward with the project, that it needs to go out to bid. And certainly the town will take responsibility for that bidding process, and once we get the specs and they're evaluated. So that's our process. With respect to this one, I was actually extremely disappointed with the article that appeared in the paper. It was unnecessary. It certainly wasn't the way that we moved forward with looking at what happened with this one. I know that Eric and I had spoken quite early on this, and it was all her concern was, let's make sure we get it right. Whatever protocol is in place, we want to make sure it's tightened up. We want to make sure that the Board of Ed understands the process. And that really was the goal from the very beginning. I know that I was on a panel 3 or 4 weeks ago on the COO panel, and I spoke at least informally with 3 members of the board, and quite frankly indicated the same thing there. I don't know that this is a zero-sum game where someone's right and someone's wrong. The goal here was to make sure that we made sure we had a very strict process, and that everyone understood the process. So that moving forward is clearly the case. Again, there's only 3 ways that we can move forward. One is items that are over $7,400 have to go out to bid. We can use for certain things, you can use the state bid list, and that would be required to be placed on the purchase order. I will also say that, and the third being, if there is a request for a bid waiver for extenuating circumstances, with respect to capital projects, that would have to go to the town council through the finance director. And with that being said, I think that this system, quite frankly, once it got back to Jim, it worked the way it was supposed to. Jim, these monies were never encumbered and certainly never released. I do want to point out one thing, and I think in Vinny Consiglio's defense, I mean, he really made a statement, and I read it, that said East Haven Company. I don't know anything about this company, but we certainly do want to promote East Haven businesses, and our charter does have a provision for that, for items. You know, when an East Haven company does bid an item and they are within striking distance of, you know, the low bidder, then they are given a priority pursuant to charter. I think that, you know, all of the above apply. I don't think there are any bad actors here. I think the process, once it was identified, straightened itself out. I think everyone's very crystal clear about how we're going to move forward with this stuff. And, you know, we look forward to kind of, you know, being a support system. And I know Jim feels that way as well. I will say this, we worked exceptionally well together with the bidding process for the turf field. I know that on the 11th hour, whether it was Lynn or AD Verderam called and said we need some help, we really all got in a, you know, a Zoom room, so to speak, and packaged that thing up, and it was done exceptionally well. So we look forward to working with you guys, you know, on it, on any of these items in the future. And if there's any confusion or there needs to be clarification, we are always available to assist in that. I completely agree with Michelle that you're acting on information that you're providing on, and at the level that you're at, you have to rely on information. And we want to be part of, you know, that team with respect to capital projects, so that you can vote and act on information that's accurate and moving forward.
Mike, could I just ask a question? I know if it's a capital project and it does go out to bid, right?
Yep.
The highest bidders come to the board and we make a decision, okay? However, being that we vote on the capital fund request projects, right? If
Yep.
it doesn't go out to bid, what role does the board then play approving it if the town has already made the decision? Why does it come back to us?
You mean with respect to a particular vendor, or?
Yeah, say if it didn't need to go out to bid, right?
Yeah.
It didn't need to go out to bid for any reason, whether it was list, proprietary, whatever. And you go ahead and you do the purchase order and you pay for the project. Why does it come back to the board to then approve if the town already did it?
Well,
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think procedurally that's how it's been done historically. I mean, you know, and as I said, with respect to your operational side, that is what it is, right? This capital side, we're inexplicably attached at the hip. And I think, you know, Keely made a point earlier in a meeting that I think is extremely valid. We are working with an absolute obsolete document in our charter. And we had hoped to attack charter revision, you know, well before where we are now. I mean, you're talking about 30-year. The last time there was charter revision, my dad was mayor. So we're dealing with a very old and obsolete document. And I think, Michelle, some of the clarifications that you're talking about will need to be made when we do, you know, we revise this charter. But we're working with a historical, if you, not to use the labor term, but it's almost like past practice. And I think, you know, we want to, what we want to make sure is that when you all come to finance, whether it's Vinny or whomever comes to finance, that process, you understand what you're asking for, what needs to be done. I still think that if you're dealing with items under $7,400, it probably wouldn't be a bad practice to seek 3 quotes anyway, but that's up to you all with respect to monies less than $7,400. I think it's really a product of, we're dealing with an obsolete document that needs to be updated when we do charter revision. Really, that's a very broad brush answer, but that's really where it's at, Michelle, I think.
I just want to make sure we're not, you know, both working towards something and in that process somehow eliminate something that the other person is doing, or doing something repetitively that's unnecessary time and effort.
You know,
Just to make sense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think Jim Keely put out a memo back in June of 2019, which would apply. There's a bidding section which we sent along to and we sent along to the board, or Jim did, and it outlines, what needs to happen with capital projects that need to go out to bid, and quite frankly outlines the ability to have a bid waiver and the ability to use, state bids in certain situations.
But that's decided by the town, correct? I just want to know what our role is.
Yeah, I think your role is to come to the town for capital expenditures to identify what they are. If they are in excess of $7,400, the town will assist and take over the bidding process.
Michelle,
Yes, Tom?
I think the reason it comes to us, because I know you and I talked about this, but I've been thinking, is because we define the scope of the project because
Okay.
it's for us. I think that's why it comes to us.
But don't we decide the scope? We already vote on the scope of the project, and then we've already voted on the request for the funds. So it seems like we're voting a third time on something that's
Yeah.
not our decision.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I think it's because we're proving that we're actually getting what we need.
Okay.
think.
And I think too, Michelle, and I can add, and I completely agree with it, but the scope of, and that's wherein lies the issue on a lot of these things, right? Who identifies what the bid specs are for certain things, and where does that expertise lie? That's, but you would bring us the specs for the scope of the job that you want, and then we would take care of the bidding process, moving forward. Yes, I agree with Tom. I think the scope of it is identified by, what you need, want. And quite frankly, back in 2018 and 19, Lynn and I worked together prior to me being town attorney. We're trying to create, some, whether it's a generic bid spec or at least the documents that are needed and should be used in every type of evaluation of specifications. So. But
Yeah.
we would only move forward on your recommendation for specifications and scope of job. And I agree with Tom on that.
Okay.
But I also think that there needs to be further clarification when we do update this, the charter.
Yeah, because it's been very, very confusing for me, and it seems like throughout the years, it's been looked at differently, I guess, and has been handled differently. So it starts to get confusing in a sense.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things that I was frustrated with is, it pitted me and Jim against you guys, and that's not at all what anyone at all wanted. It was a creation of whatever. But the goal from the minute it was brought to everyone's attention, to make sure that we did clarify as much as we could the direction that finance wanted to go with this. So, and that was the direction that I got from the superintendent, and certainly from you, that we wanted to get it right. That whatever process was in place was imperfect. I'm not sure we'll have a perfect process going forward, but what happened here, and I is Jim Keeley didn't sign off on this PO, and it would have been one way or the other identified that it had to come back to you all anyway. So now this is on the capital side. Like I said, we're inexplicably attached to the capital side.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions, Jack?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I have no picture right now, but anyway, not a question, but a statement. I had previously had a conversation with Attorney Luzzi, and just want to make a statement that the board voted on this in good conscience based on the information that they were given. And apparently somewhere along the line, something wasn't quite right. It was discovered, and that's the way it should have been. And as I stated to some in the community and to Attorney Luzzi, this was a non-story. We did it the right way. It was discovered and things were taken. Monies were not appropriated. And again, my whole thing is, I don't see where there was a story in this to begin with. And I never felt that, Attorney Luzzi was attacking us. I just felt that a mountain was made out of a molehill. Thank you.
We have to sell the story, Jack.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any questions? Tom?
All right, how's that? All right,
Yes.
so I've been fighting this fight for at least a year. We have a major problem in our Board of Education with going out to bid. And somehow we have to stop it. We probably spent $1 million this year without going out to bid. And it's not right, and it has to stop. And you guys all know, every meeting I beat the drum on it. We have had $50,000 purchases that were split up on 7 POs. We
Tom, I
went
just
to-
want to make sure you're not referencing capital funds, correct? You're
Not
you're
capital.
referencing-
I'm
Okay,
talking about our board ed.
okay.
We went to a local hardware store and purchased window air conditioner units for $6,950. And I can go on and on.
I think this is probably something I don't think
Wrong.
Attorney Luzzy could comment on or answer, but we should cover when we go over that 5,000 series.
It's wrong. Yeah,
Okay,
we have
thank
to
you.
go.
Thank you. All right, so if anyone doesn't have any further questions for Attorney Luzzy, I am going to turn this over to, actually, no, I'm going to first ask for subcommittee reports. I apologize. This is
Thank you, Attorney Luzzy.
by Mike. Thank you. Thank you very much. Erica, do you have a report?
I have nothing for community outreach, but I just, what was spoken about in policy, and that I do think we should have a policy workshop.
Okay, thank you. Tia?
Yes, I'm sorry, negotiations are going very well so far. Little glitches in meeting times due to unforeseen circumstances, but with the paras and soon the custodians.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think next, Jack, athletics, curriculum.
Yeah, just quickly, the winter sports season will be starting, I believe tomorrow. And games can be listened to. I'm sure Mr. Bertram or Erica will fill us in on that. And we had talked earlier in the year regarding the George D. Ritchie Sportsmanship Award, and that was received by the coaches, boys soccer, and that team. So congratulations to them.
Great, good news. Thank you. All right, so at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the superintendent for her report.
Thank
Oh,
you.
wait, I'm sorry, Tom, I'm sorry, I totally forgot finance. Tom, you're good? Okay. I don't know how I forgot that, but okay, Erica, go ahead.
Thank you. At this time, I'll call on Anthony Bertram for an athletic update, please.
Hi, good evening. Just a quick update on athletics. Tomorrow we will be opening. The boys will be home against North Haven. Girls will be away against North Haven. Coach George DeMeo is going to be broadcasting the boys game. So that's going to be on Facebook Live, and we're looking forward to Coach DeMeo coming. Hockey is also opening up tomorrow. The unfortunate thing is right now there's going to be no fans for the month of February. We will be revisiting that with the health department for March. All of our games for the basketball season can be viewed on the NFHS network. I tweeted a link out, and Mr. Donuzzo is going to be sending additional links out in his weekly update. Additionally, for hockey, Mr. Becker is going to be broadcasting all of the games live on the district's YouTube page, and it's also going to be announced. So we're looking forward to that. That's going to be a very quality production by Mr. Becker and his staff. And additionally, middle school athletics. At the conclusion of this week with the games rollout, we're going to sit down again with the principals, Ms. Forty, and we're going to discuss with Mr. Stacy as well, the rollout of hopefully middle school athletics.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't know if anybody got to see it, but in ZIP 06, the East Haven Public Schools had an article regarding our curriculum that was changing to meet the state regulations on courses aimed at adding a more balanced racial perspective in the 21-22 school year. I also wanted to let the community know that we're going to be giving a 5-day breakfast and lunch pack for February break. So parents and families can drive through the back of East Haven High School from 10 to 11:30 on Thursday, February 11th, that's this Thursday, or the front of the middle school from 12:30 to 1:30 and receive a pack of 5 days worth of breakfast and lunch to cover over February break. The State Department of Education placed districts on tiers for discipline disparities. They placed all Connecticut districts into these tiers based on disparities in rates of suspensions and expulsions. The data and information was publicly released this past week and can be found on the state website. Districts were placed into tiers based on the following criteria. Tier 1 meant that you had low suspension rate disproportionality, all the way to Tier 4, which was the highest tier, which means you've consistently had high suspension rates. East Haven was placed on Tier 1, the lowest tier, and we are happy to report that the district has been committed to working with the state and Dr. Joanne Freiberg, as well as Bob and People Services and Jennifer Murray on training staff on a framework called restorative practices that creates positive school climate and culture. And as a result, have seen decreases in our suspension and in-school suspension and expulsion rates. It is Career and Technical Education Month. So we are celebrating this month. We are showcasing the work of our HOSA students, our Health Occupation Students of America. We are acknowledging our partnerships and efforts of our East Haven Public Schools Career and Technical Education Advisory Board. And we are sharing some of our innovative CTE teaching strategies and learning moments. And finally, the Connecticut State Department of Education has updated addendums number 5 and number 9 for COVID-19. Addendum 5 is guidance for responding to COVID-19 scenarios in Connecticut school districts, and addendum number 9 is contact tracing scenarios in schools. We continue to use these guides and the most updated versions as the state circulates new ones. And that is it for this evening. Thank you.
Michelle, you're muted.
Yes, I just realized that. I just wanted to say, we did bypass roll call unintentionally. So if I could just have Melissa do that before we go forward with Jen's report.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Tia De Palma.
Here.
Jennifer DeLongo.
Here.
Lisa Geraci Anastasio. Tom Hennessy.
Here.
Sorry. Tom Murtaugh.
Here.
Marianne Pellegrino.
Here.
Erica Santiago.
Here.
Jack Stacy.
Here.
And Michelle Delusion.
Here.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. And I will pass this along to our Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Murphy.
Thank you. I'm not muted. Good. Welcome, everybody. And thank you for joining us, members of the public who are here today. I wanted to say happy first remote learning day. I was able to speak with several principals and teachers who reported many successes from today's remote learning day. We will be, as the superintendent stated, reaching out for additional feedback from families. I hope everyone was able to stay safe and warm. I'd also like to offer our best wishes to Mrs. Sue Harkins, whose retirement is listed on our personnel list today. We'd like to thank her for her many years of service and continued commitment to the students and faculty of East Haven. And to Mrs. Forty's point about our CTE week, Ms. Harkins has been instrumental in many of our initiatives, including improving our career-oriented student organizations such as HOSA, our recent Pathways initiative, and we wish her all the best. I'd also like to bring the public's attention to the board curriculum workshop that we presented earlier today. I believe we have access to information. We presented some information regarding the ESSER 2 round of funding and the enhancements we propose might be made in our instructional program, provided that our grant is approved and we go through that process. And those include enhancements that would involve continuity of instruction, acceleration of learning, academic interventions, and social emotional supports. And I want to thank the many families who have been so candid in reaching out to our office and speaking with us about your struggles. We realize there are many different ways this pandemic has taken a toll on families, whether you are a student who traditionally performed very well in our school settings, or whether you were a student who has additional potential for learning. And so those conversations were instrumental, and I thank you for your candor. February is officially recognized as Black History Month since African-American scholar Carter Woodson elected to highlight the contributions, and he chose to do so during the month of February because that is the month in which Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln were born. Fun fact. Although East Haven Public Schools faculty and staff have demonstrated their commitment to honoring representations of the contributions of African-Americans and all Americans throughout the school year, we do still create space to highlight and celebrate curricular connections to African-Americans during this time. For more information, the article in Zippo 6 that Erica highlighted highlights some of our year-long curricular and restorative initiatives designed to embed equity and inclusion into our programs of study. The district is also excited to welcome Ms. Tiffany Young as a featured keynote speaker. She will be speaking to an audience of teachers who are interested in learning more about how to use community and student engagement strategies to help create opportunities for personal and professional growth. Her keynote is entitled From Pain to Purpose, Empowering Our Youth and Ourselves in the Age of COVID-19. Ms. Young was awarded the 2020 Oprah Winfrey Award for Leadership and Exposure and was honored as one of the 100 women of color making a difference in Connecticut. In her current role as executive director of the Hartford Yard Goods Foundation, she works with many public school systems on youth empowerment, mentoring, and career readiness programs in sports management. The keynote will be held on Friday, February 26th from 1 to 2 p.m. and all East Haven faculty members are welcome to attend. Be on the lookout for more information. Families of students in grades K through 5 are encouraged to reach out if they would like to participate in a committee to reflect and improve the elementary school report card and two-way communication between students and families. Please look out for a communication from your school principal in the coming weeks. And finally, our next Curriculum Advisory Council meeting will be held on February 23rd, 2021 at 4 p.m. Items on the agenda will include a presentation regarding the 8th grade social studies textbook resource adoption process. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Jen. I actually just sent you an email to see if I could get an invite to that keynote presentation. I'd love to get a chance to listen in. That would be great. Thank you. Moving on. We're going to approval of meeting minutes from January 26, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Tia DePalma, I motion to accept the minutes for January, was it 23rd?
26.
24th, sorry, 2021.
Erica Santiago, I second it.
Okay, so if there's any questions? If not, I'm going to ask Melissa, could you do a roll call vote to approve the meeting minutes from January 26th?
Sure. Tia DePalma,
Yes.
Jennifer DeLongo,
Yes.
Tom Hennessy,
Yes.
Tom Murtaugh,
Yes.
Marianne Pellegrino,
Yes,
Erica Santiago,
Yes.
Jack Stacy,
Yes.
and Michelle DeLucia.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to approval of consent agenda. We have approval of invoices for fiscal year 2020-2021 in the amount of 1 million. Can everyone mute themselves, please? Thank you. Approval of invoices for fiscal year 2020-2021 in the amount of $1,260,007. And approval of purchase orders over 7,000. Do I have a motion?
Marianne Pellegrino, I might make an emotion to accept the consent agenda.
Ed De Palma, second.
If there's no questions, I'm going to ask, all right, first, any questions? I want to make sure I don't miss anyone. No, great. Then I'm going to ask Melissa to go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Tia DePalma,
Yes.
Jennifer DeLongo,
Yes.
Tom Hennessy,
No.
Tom Murtaugh,
Yes.
Marianne Pellegrino,
Yes,
Erica Santiago,
Yes.
Jack Stacy,
Yes.
and Michelle DeLucia.
Yes.
Seven, four, one opposed, motion carries.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to move on to our audience of citizens portion of this evening. And Melissa, is there anyone here who would like to speak this evening?
Okay, if there's anyone who would like to speak, please use the raise your hand option. Please remember to state your name and your address. Okay, it looks like Lorena. Okay, I'm going to give you access to speak. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Lorena Venegas from 73 George Street.
Good evening, Lorena.
I want to say a couple of things. Number one, public education is not self-service. And a lot of parents are having that as part of our kids' education right now. We have a big gap in not having remote teachers when a teacher is out. I have a little list of things that are outstanding. We still haven't seen the student and the teacher surveys from Thanksgiving. In terms of the roofing bid, when I heard what happened on January 12th and the omission during the discussion and that there were no questions from anyone here except Tom Hennessy questioning why it didn't go out to bid, I had a big problem with that because bidding is a very serious procedure and it's not to be taken lightly. And what happened in our district is extremely serious because it could have set precedent for impacting us in getting future funding on different state and federal levels if you don't do things the proper way. What happened at this board is that you voted on a rigged purchase order because there were no internal checks and no one on the board asked for those internal checks. One thing that you could do as a board member is you don't have to be a financial guru because you have the people working for the superintendent who can lead you to get the research and the information that you need to make a good decision. One of the things you could use is Robert's rules. You can make a motion to table it, to ask for more data, to request more signatures or more information from town hall. But none of those steps were done that night. And that really disturbed me because the essence of the board is that you are supposed to be working together and it's okay not to know things. And it's okay to have conflicts of interest too, but all those things have to be on the table. And none of those things were done. I think this board should do a reversal of what happened on January 12th and take that vote back, because that would speak volumes that you do have integrity in the internal procedures and the way that fiscal responsibilities work. I'm really upset that this happened here, because it shouldn't have happened. And we cannot be giving money that's future debt to our children, which is what capital expenditure is. It's a loan. It's a bond debt that our children in the future have to pay for. And it wasn't right to do. It wasn't the right procedure. And the way that this happened is that on January 12th, you voted to do this. And that very night, I started writing. And I wrote to Jim Keeley on Wednesday, do you know anything about this? And he said, nope, I don't know anything about this. And that was just a red flag for me. But I got an email back from him. And that led me to do Freedom of Information requests, where I told Town Attorney Luzzy the problem. And I went to Board of Finance and I told them the problem, that I don't have a policy and procedures manual book on how finances are done in the town and how that relationship ties in with the Board of Ed. I called people in Town Hall, Katie DePonte. I spoke to Candy. I didn't get anything. I sent a Freedom of Information to the superintendent here, Erica Forty. She didn't send the email correspondence back that she had with Jim. So when I saw all omissions of information, omission of basic internal procedures that should be followed when you do a PO, and when I saw Lynn Boisver on video say that,
I'm sorry, but we're at the 3-minute mark. I know the board did get your letter, and it was an error. I'm not ashamed to admit it. The board got the information. It was the board got that information. We have to trust that we get information that's valid and reliable. The board does not vote on capital funds, except to request. That is a town, duty that then comes to us.
Michelle.
And that is it. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, so then at this time, we're going to move on to new business. We have 7.1, discussion and possible action on the approval of hires, rehires, and stipends.
Leah DePalma, I'd like to proposal for taking action on the approval of hires, rehires, and stipends.
Jack Stacy, I'll second.
Does anyone have any questions before we put this to a vote? Or comments other than how much we're all gonna miss Sue Harkins, who I had for chemistry in 12th grade. Oh no, 11th grade, actually.
Yes, she's such an instrumental part of our educational community and community at large, and we thank her for her many years of service. Really an amazing educator and an amazing leader.
Okay, so at this time, Melissa, can you do a roll call?
Tia has her hand raised.
Oh, Tia, sorry.
Yeah, but I was going to say the same thing, and Michelle said we can't. So, but I absolutely love Sue Harkins, and I think we're going to lose her. I'm sorry, I had to say it.
I think we all agree. All right, Melissa, roll call vote.
Yes.
I guess I have to. I have to say yes, but I don't want to, but okay.
Okay. Tia DePalma, Jennifer DeLongo. Hold on 1 second.
Yes.
Jennifer DeLongo,
Yes. No.
Tom Hennessy,
Yes.
Tom Murtaugh,
Yes.
Marianne Pellegrino,
Yes.
Erica Santiago,
Yes, and congratulations, Sue, on your retirement.
Jack Stacy,
Yes.
and Michelle DeLucia.
Yes.
All in favor. Motion carries.
And that brings us to 7.2, discussion and possible action on the 2021-2022 school calendar.
Yes, just a little preface. I'd like to thank Jen Murphy and those she contributed in the construction of the calendar this year. Jen, did you have any comments you wanted to make pertaining to the adjustments that you made based on the input you received?
Sure, yeah, we had an opportunity to discuss with teachers and representation from the East Haven Education Association, as well as look at past practices and initiatives that we want to make sure our teachers need. So we do have a start date of August 26th for teachers, with the current end date being the 13th of June. And I leave it to the board for your questions and consideration. We tried to model after previous years with some enhancements proposed by the individuals that we connected with. And so I will be happy to field any questions that you might have.
We have to make a motion first, Michelle?
You're muted.
Am I muted now?
No, did anyone have any questions about the calendar to clarify? If not, then I would ask for a motion at this time.
I have no question. I can make a motion, and I'd like to thank you for adding 3 Kings to the calendar. I do appreciate that portion. I'll make a motion that we approve the 2021-2022 school calendar.
Jennifer DeLongo, I second.
So at this time, before we vote, I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions. No?
Can I just make a comment? I see also February, this is Tia DePalma. I like how you strategically have a 5-day break in the calendar by pushing out the February, because there is a really long time between February and April. So I commend you. That was a good idea.
Yep, our families and our teachers had a lot of good insight. So thanks. We listen, we try.
Okay, so at this time, Melissa, could you do a roll call vote?
Okay. Tia DePalma,
Yes.
Jennifer DeLongo,
Yes.
Tom Hennessy,
No.
Tom Murtaugh,
Yes.
Marianne Pellegrino,
Yes.
Erica Santiago,
Yes.
Jack Stacy,
Yes.
and Michelle DeLucia.
Yes. Okay,
7
so
in favor, 1 opposed. Motion carries.
there, that brings me to 7.3. I'm muting it. Discussion and possible approval of the purchase of a full page ad for the 2021 East Haven High School yearbook in the amount of $390. I will say, I believe this has been practice of the board for the past few years, if I'm correct. Am I right on this, Erica?
Yep. Yes, you are. And I'd like to thank Melissa for the redesign of the ad this year. I think it's got a really nice fresh look to it, and I think it would look great in the yearbook this year.
I make a motion to approve the full page ad for the 2021 East Haven High School yearbook ad in the amount of $390.
Tia DePalma, I second.
If there's no questions, I'm gonna go ahead and ask Melissa to do a roll call vote. Any questions first? No? Okay, Melissa?
Tia DePalma,
Yes.
Jennifer DeLongo,
Yes.
Tom Hennessy,
Yes.
Tom Murtaugh,
Yes.
Marianne Pellegrino,
Yes.
Erica Santiago,
Yes. I don't know if I saw.
sorry, and mine's in and out, so I couldn't tell you there. Jack Stacy
Yes.
and Michelle DeLucia.
Yes.
All in favor, motion.
Okay, so we have come to the end of the meeting. We do still have discussion concerning future agenda items. Earlier I did make a mistake. It is the 3000 series that covers the bidding process. And I believe we could just take a look at that maybe next meeting, just so we can, not the whole series, but just for the bidding process, really clarify for everyone exactly what the process is and, discuss if we need to make changes going forward, just so we put that out there. And that's the only thing that I can think of at this time. Again, everyone is, encouraged to email myself or the superintendent with any requests that they have for future agenda items. Unless you'd like to do so now. And if not, then I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Next meeting, please, date?
Next meeting is February 23rd. That's usually after the adjournment, but I mean, it's February 23rd, 2021, at 6 p.m. for finance and regular at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Michelle we will be planning with Erica. I could ask Santiago, you'll set up a time for the subcommittee meeting on policy?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll send out, I'm going to coordinate something with Erica so that we can put something together and then we'll get a subcommittee going.
Maybe we can call it a policy workshop, so it'll be like a work session, and then on the 23rd, we'll have a policy subcommittee.
That works?
Yeah, I think that works.
It
So
might
maybe would we do policy subcommittee at 6 and then finance at 6:30?
That works for me.
Okay.
Because that way we have time to, if we are going to, the curriculum committee meets then too on that day. So
yeah,
we're just in out, Okay, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So this time I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Erica Santiago, motion to adjourn.
Marianne Pellegrino, second.
All right, meeting adjourned. See you guys in a couple of weeks.